Something really caught my eye this morning, something serious we need to discuss.
Oh, what's that?
It's this news about the Nipah virus popping up again, and unfortunately, it's back in Kerala.
Yes. Kerala, not again.
Exactly. As of today, May 8th, 2025, the focus is squarely on the Malappuram district.
Yes, I saw the initial reports. It's definitely concerning. We know a 42-year-old woman in Valanchery tested positive.
And her condition is critical, right? At a hospital in Perinthalmanna.
That's the information we have, yes.
Yeah.
Critical condition. It's quite serious.
And what really ramps up the worry are these reports that two people in her own household are showing symptoms too.
Mm.
Fever, convulsions.
Yeah, that immediately raises red flags about potential spread. It really highlights how urgent this is.
Absolutely. We've been digging into the early news and the first bits of expert commentary coming out.
Right. So for this deep dive, our aim is really to, get past those initial headlines. We want to unpack what's actually happening.
Lay out the key facts, maybe understand why Kerala seems to face this repeatedly.
Exactly. And look at the implications. But without getting bogged down in overly technical stuff, keep it clear for you.
Okay, sounds good. Let's jump in. For anyone who might need a quick refresher, what exactly is this Nipah virus? The name, where does that come from?
Sure. So the name Nipah, it actually comes from a village, Kampung Sungai Nipah in Malaysia. That's where it was first identified, way back in 1998.
Malaysia, okay.
And fundamentally, it's a zoonotic virus. That just means it jumps from animals to people.
And the main culprits are?
Fruit bats. So the primary natural reservoir. And the tricky part is these bats carry the virus, but often don't get sick themselves. They're asymptomatic carriers.
Right, like we see with some other viruses. Fruit bats always seem to be involved somehow. Any other animals we need to worry about?
Well, pigs have sometimes acted as intermediate hosts, sort
Yeah.
of a bridge between bats and humans, especially in some earlier outbreaks.
Okay, so bats, maybe pigs, how do people actually get infected then?
Several ways. Direct contact with an infected animal, whether it's a bat or an intermediate host like a pig.
Makes sense.
Another major route, and this is really relevant in places like Kerala, is eating contaminated food. Think fruit, like mangoes or that local fruit, Irumpanpuli.
Avaroa bilimbi.
That's the one. If a bat has bitten or contaminated the fruit with saliva or droppings, and someone eats it, that's a transmission route.
Wow, just eating a piece of fruit.
It's a possibility, yes. And then, crucially, there's human-to-human transmission. Once someone is infected, they can pass it on to others, often through close contact with bodily fluids.
Which is obviously a huge concern for healthcare workers and families.
Absolutely.
So it's not just like a bad cold, the symptoms sound much more severe.
Oh, definitely. It often starts, kind of innocuously. Flu-like things, fever, headache, muscle aches, maybe vomiting.
Pretty standard viral stuff initially.
Right. But it can escalate, and quickly, to severe respiratory problems and encephalitis.
Brain inflammation.
Exactly. Brain swelling. That can lead to confusion, drowsiness, disorientation, coma, and potentially death. It's a very serious progression.
I remember hearing the mortality rate is terrifyingly high for Nipah.
It is. The WHO puts it somewhere between 40% and 75%. That's incredibly high for an infectious disease.
40 to 75%. That really drives home how dangerous this is.
It does. And adding to the challenge, there's currently no specific cure, no specific antiviral treatment, and no vaccine.
So care is just supportive, trying to
Yeah.
manage the symptoms.
Precisely. Intensive supportive care is critical, managing breathing, hydration, trying to prevent secondary infections, giving the body the best chance to fight it off. But we don't have a specific weapon against the virus itself yet.
Okay, so that's the virus. Now, you mentioned Kerala. This isn't their first encounter with Nipah, is it? It feels like we've heard the story before from there.
You're absolutely right. It's not the first time. Kerala has unfortunately faced multiple Nipah outbreaks over the past several years. There's definitely a sense of, here we go again, and a lot of anxiety, understandably.
Can you run us through that history, just briefly? Seeing the pattern is probably important.
Sure. The first major outbreak that really put Nipah on the map in Kerala was in 2018. That was mainly in Kozhikode and Malappuram districts.
I remember that one. It was bad.
It was devastating. Out of 18 confirmed cases, 17 people died. The index case, the first identified patient, was a young man, Mohammed Saibith, 27 years old. They did manage to contain it by June 2018, but the toll was heavy.
17 deaths. Terrible. What happened after that?
Well, in 2019, there was a scare, and one confirmed case in Ernakulam district, a 23-year-old student. But thankfully, due to really swift action, early detection, and isolation, It didn't spread. No deaths that time.
Okay, so a better outcome in 2019.
Yes. But then 2021, it reappeared in Kozhikode. Sadly, a 12-year-old boy died from the virus.
Just one case, but still tragic.
Absolutely. Then, jump to 2023, again in Kozhikode. This time there were 6 confirmed cases, and unfortunately 2 of those patients died.
Okay, 2023. 2 deaths.
And then just last year, 2024, it was back in Malappuram. 2 separate fatal cases. 14-year-old boy died in July, and then a 24-year-old man in September.
So 2018, 2019, 1 case, no deaths. 2021, 2023, 2024. And now May 2025, back in Malappuram. It's a clear, recurring pattern.
It really is. This latest confirmation, the 42-year-old woman in Valanchery, confirmed by the National Institute of Virology in Pune, it just slots right into that worrying sequence. And as we said, her condition is critical.
And those 2 family members showing symptoms, fever, convulsions, that must have triggered an immediate massive response from the health authorities.
Oh, undoubtedly. The Kerala Health Minister, Veena George, and the whole state health department, they've activated their protocols immediately. They have experience with this now, unfortunately.
What are they actually doing on the ground in Valanchery right now? What containment measures are in place?
Well, the focus is immediate containment. Reports suggest measures are active in probably 5 civic wards around the affected area. Things like mandatory mask wearing,
Okay.
school closures, shutting down cinema halls, restricting shop hours, looks like 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. for now, and a ban on any kind of social gathering, basically limiting opportunities for the virus to spread.
Sounds like a pretty standard but necessary lockdown approach for the immediate vicinity. What about the public health teams?
Significant resources are being deployed. They've apparently set up 16 specific committees just for contact tracing and doing field surveys. They're mapping out a 3-kilometer radius around the woman's home.
16 committees. That's intensive.
It is. Plus, around 66 dedicated monitoring teams are out there. And nearby hospitals, like the Malappuram Government Medical College, are on high alert, ready to handle potential cases.
Is there support coming from the national level, too?
Yes, the Union Health Ministry is involved. They sent a team from the National Center for Disease Control, the NCDC, to provide support and expertise. Kerala has its own Nipah protocol, developed from these past outbreaks, and they're leaning heavily on that framework now.
Okay, so a strong response is underway. But this leads us to that big question. Why Kerala? What is it about this state that makes it seem so vulnerable to Nipah again and again?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's likely not just one single thing, but a combination of factors.
Right.
A big part of it is almost certainly Kerala's environment. It's lush, tropical, lots of forests, abundant fruit trees. Basically ideal habitat for fruit bats.
The very carriers of the virus.
Exactly. So you have a high population of the natural host living in close proximity to human populations. That naturally increases the chances of spillover events, where the virus jumps from bats to humans, maybe via contaminated fruit or other means.
So its beautiful environment is also, in a way, a risk factor.
In this specific context, yes, it seems to be. Then you layer on things like climate change.
How does that play into it?
We're changing weather patterns, altered seasons. This can disrupt bat habitats, maybe stress the bats, potentially affect their immune systems or their feeding patterns. This could lead them to forage closer to human areas or shed the virus more readily. It increases the interface between wildlife and people.
Okay, so environmental factors, maybe climate change. Oh, what about human activities?
Definitely. Rapid urbanization and deforestation are happening in Kerala, as in many places. When forests are cleared for agriculture or development, wildlife gets pushed into smaller areas or closer to towns and villages. Again, increasing that human-animal contact potential.
Closer proximity, more risk.
Precisely. And there was an interesting observation noted by a public health expert, A. Altaf. He pointed out that young males, maybe in the 12 to 25 age range, seem to be affected quite often.
Why is that?
The speculation is it might be linked to behavior. Maybe they're more likely to be involved in outdoor activities, climbing trees, collecting wild fruits, which would put them at higher risk of encountering contaminated fruit or even bats themselves.
That's a specific demographic angle. Interesting. Is there anything about the health infrastructure itself that's relevant here?
One key point that often comes up is the testing capability. Currently, for definitive confirmation, samples have to be sent all the way to the National Institute of Virology in Pune.
That takes time, right, when you need rapid results?
Exactly. There have been plans for a high-level Biosafety Level 3, or BSL-3, lab in Kozhikode, specifically for this kind of work. But its completion was delayed, partly due to the COVID-19 pandemic diverting resources and attention.
Ah, Okay, so that local capacity isn't quite there yet.
Not fully operational for Nipah confirmation, no. The hope is it will be finished by the end of this year, 2025. Having that BSL-3 lab locally would make a huge difference in speeding up diagnosis and response in future
Yeah,
incidents.
definitely. Now, we've talked a lot about the virus, the history, the response, but it's crucial we don't lose sight of the human element in all this.
Absolutely vital. Behind every statistic, every case number, there's a person, a family, a community. This 42-year-old woman in Valanchery, she's not just a case. She has a life, people who care about her, and she's fighting for her life right now.
And her family members, the ones with symptoms, imagine the anxiety, the fear they must be feeling, waiting for news, hoping for the best.
It's an incredibly stressful and frightening time for them. And we should also remember the sacrifices made in past outbreaks.
Like Nurse Nipah in 2018.
Exactly, Nurse Lini. She contracted Nipah while caring for patients and tragically died, leaving behind a young family. Her story is such a powerful, heartbreaking reminder of the risks healthcare workers take on the front lines. They are true heroes in these situations.
Absolutely. And beyond the immediate families and healthcare workers, the entire community feels the impact, right? The lockdowns, the fear, the disruption to daily life. It takes a psychological toll.
It absolutely does. Living under the shadow of a deadly virus, even with containment measures, creates a lot of stress and uncertainty for everyone in the affected area.
So looking forward now, what are the immediate priorities and what needs to happen long term to deal with this recurring threat?
Okay, immediately. It's all about that meticulous contact tracing, finding everyone who might have been exposed and rigorously enforcing those preventive measures we talked about. Masks, avoiding gatherings, hand hygiene, and public awareness is key, reminding people constantly about the risk from potentially contaminated fruits.
Simple measures, but critical. What about the bigger picture?
Longer term, number one is getting that BSL-3 lab in Cozy Code up and running urgently. That's critical for faster diagnosis and research.
Right, local capacity.
Then it's about strengthening the overall public health system. Better surveillance for zoonotic diseases, more research into bat ecology and virus transmission in the local context.
And tackling the root causes.
Yes, though that's much harder. Addressing the underlying drivers like climate change impacts and habitat loss, that requires broad, sustained effort across many sectors, not just health. And continuing those awareness campaigns about avoiding bat-bitten fruit that needs to be a constant message.
You hear about the One Health approach sometimes. Is that relevant here?
Very relevant. One Health recognizes that human health, animal health, and environmental health are all interconnected. You can't really tackle zoonotic diseases like Nipah effectively without considering all three.
So it's about collaboration between doctors, vets, ecologists.
Exactly. India has adopted the One Health concept, which is great. But it needs more resources, more research that bridges these disciplines, and stronger lab networks nationwide to really make it effective against threats like Nipah. It needs scaling up.
Okay. And just to wrap up, while this is happening in Kerala right now, Nipah isn't just a Kerala problem or even just an India problem, is it?
Not at all. Nipah is considered a global health security threat. It's on the WHO's list of priority pathogens for research and development because it has pandemic potential.
Why pandemic potential?
Because of that high mortality rate we discussed and its ability to spread from person to person. Combine that with the fact that its natural reservoir, fruit bats, are found across large parts of Asia and beyond.
So it could emerge elsewhere.
It already has.
Yeah.
We mentioned Malaysia, but there have been significant outbreaks in Bangladesh, some spillover into India from there previously, and even a case linked to importation in Singapore. It shows the virus can travel.
And climate change could make that worse globally.
That's the concern, yes. As climate change alters ecosystems worldwide, it could potentially expand the range of fruit bats or increase the likelihood of spillover events in new areas. It adds another layer of complexity to the global risk.
So here we are, May 8th, 2025. Kerala is once again grappling with Nipah. The focus is intense on this critically ill woman, her family, and the community response in Malappuram.
That's the current reality. The key things for you to take away are, this is a serious virus. There are specific environmental and potentially human factors making Kerala vulnerable. And constant vigilance, rapid response, and strong public health measures are absolutely essential, both now and for the future.
It really does make you think about that delicate balance, doesn't it? Between our activities, our expanding presence, and the natural world, including the viruses that exist within it, a constant challenge in our connected world. Definitely something to keep thinking about.